Now, 8 times more children are to face extreme heat waves by 2050. That is according to a flagship State of the World report by UNICEF that's been released today. Kemi Knight has been looking into the report and she's with me in the studio now. Kemi, what are the main findings here?
So the report has looked in particular at 3 mega trends that it says will profoundly impact children's lives between now and 2050. Now, those are demographics shifts, climate and environmental crises, as well as frontier technologies. Now, if we start with the demographic shifts, the number of children is expected to remain similar to the current figure of about 2.3 billion, but they'll represent a much smaller share of the larger and ageing global population of around 10 billion. And while the proportion of children will decline across most regions, their numbers are expected to explode in some of the most poor areas, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. Now, it's a double-edged sword, of course, because it does offer the potential to boost economic growth, but only if that's coupled with education, healthcare, and job opportunities. And meanwhile, in some developed countries in East Asia and Western Europe, children could end up making up less than 17% of the population by 2050, spurring on its own set of problems brought on by an ageing population.
Right, and UNICEF is also pointing to the problems that climate change is going to keep posing.
That's right, and if current greenhouse gas emission trends continue, UNICEF projects that by 2050, children could face 8 times more heat waves than in 2000s, 3 times more flooding, and 1.7 times more wildfires. Now, the reason why studying the link between climate change and children's well-being is so relevant is because their developing bodies are much more susceptible to these hazards, so they're really on the front line when it comes to climate change. As things stand, air pollution is already a leading cause of death in children under 5 years old. Rising temperatures can also lead to an increase in mosquito populations, which spread diseases like malaria, dengue and Zika. And floods contaminate water supplies, leading to waterborne diseases, which are also a major cause of death in children under the age of 5. Now, not only does it impact children's health, but it impacts every stage of their life, including education. And the World Bank recently called the educational impacts of the climate crisis an economic time bomb. Since 2022, more than 400 million students have experienced school closures due to extreme weather.
Yeah, look, these are bleak findings, Kemi. Is there anything to be optimistic about in this report?
There is. In the technology area, which is another megatrend of the report, it finds huge potential, particularly when it comes to the development of vaccines, for example, or AI helping with education methods. And if we look at progress that's already been made, under 5 mortality has dropped 60% in the past 30 years, and malnutrition has decreased by 45%. Rising vaccination coverage has also saved countless lives, an estimated 31 million for measles alone. And then looking ahead, if we look at the report's business as usual scenario, newborn survival rates will continue to globally increase by nearly 4 percentage points from the 2000s, and by the 2050s, almost 96% of children are projected to have at least primary education. That's up from only 80% in the 2000s. Globally, fewer children are also projected to live in areas with a high risk of prolonged subnational conflict. So a lot of work to do still when it comes to climate change, given their vulnerable position, but global trends do project improvements overall.